You're listening to the Leading Healthy Creative Teams podcast with Matt Curtis. This is the podcast that helps you take your creative team from wherever you are today to healthy and effective.
Hey friends, thanks for joining me this week on the Leading Healthy Creative Teams podcast. This week, we're going to be talking about leadership as a creative. Every time I've had a conversation with a young creative, I've asked this: do you want to become a leader? Do you want to lead the creative team or the communications team? Do you want to step into that role at some point? Almost always, the answer is no. I have no interest in leading people. Instead, I want to stay focused on my trade. I want to become a craftsman. I want to grow in my abilities in the things that I'm doing. I love graphic design. I want to keep doing it. That's great. Here's the tension that I've seen and that I've lived, unfortunately. No one cares about your trade in the church. No one knows how to care about your trade in the church, because no one else on the church staff is a creative. None of them went to design school, or none of them have worked with clients on design projects. None of them study typography. None of them study communication channels or comm strategies. It's just not what people study in the church. They're studying theology. They're studying how do you interact with people? How do you, plan a funeral? How do you care for people when they've gone through loss? How do you navigate these complicated theological questions? Those are the things where the team around you is investing their energy. So let me bridge the gap here, because that's what this is. There's a gap between creative ministry and the rest of ministry. And I believe part of that tension comes because creatives in the church, no matter your level, have ignored and in some cases actively rejected growing as a leader. I believe that no matter your role on the church staff, as a creative specifically, you need to exhibit certain leadership qualities if you hope to make progress in your organization. Way back in the podcast, I went through these 4 cores of the creative. These are designed to help leadership begin to understand how the creative ticks. So now for you, creative, these are 7 leadership mindset shifts that you need to make in order to become more compatible with leadership. What that means is that your ideas are heard more than they've ever been heard. It means that people value your opinion and they look forward to conversations with you rather than dodging them because they're stressed about the interaction. So we're looking at healing this relationship and building this bridge from both sides. Leaders, listen to the 4 Cores podcast. It's actually 4 episodes. I'm probably going to refilm a lot of those and put them on YouTube just because I feel like that's a really helpful place for them to exist as well. And then creatives, this is your side of the bridge. So if you're creative listening, listen. If you're a leader listening, maybe forward it to somebody who is a creative, because we want to get these principles adapted into the creative space in the church so that we can leverage creative ministry effectively. So here we go. First, you want to help others grow safely. That means that when something goes wrong, you're not yelling at people. You're not pointing out, hey, this was a failure. You're such a train wreck. I say that, it sounds dramatic. I've heard those conversations. Hey, that was a dumb idea. Hey, I can't believe that we did that and that we approached it that way. Those are not leadership statements. Growing safely is important for this reason. If you can't fail without significant repercussions, the positioning of your whole decision-making process is going to be toward avoiding failure, not pursuing growth. Avoiding failure isn't a good position to be in. All you're going to do is you're going to do the reliable, the expected, it should work out okay if we go this route. That's not where growth lives. That's not where you discover something new. I think that a lot of the reason that churches are really hesitant about engaging in social media still, even though it's proven that it's not a space that's going away anytime soon, it's because of failure. It's a fear of failure. The way that you can encourage this as a church creative is by not making it a huge problem if failure happens. Instead, walk in and say, hey, this didn't seem like it worked. Let's talk about what we thought didn't work about it. Let's look at the analytics or the numbers or however you evaluate these things. And let's figure out what we can do next time to grow or to improve or to do better. What you're doing is you're making it safe for ministry leaders to have ideas. Sure, somebody's going to come to you and they're going to be frustrated that your plan didn't work. I get it. You're going to have to let that roll off your back. We're going to talk about some other mindset shifts that will help with that. But when somebody comes to you with an idea and it's something that you're going to be moving forward with, when you model that it's okay to make mistakes, that will come back to you. That will be also returned to you eventually. And that, well, this guy doesn't ever call me to task when I make a mistake. So let's I'm going to model the same thing. Let's go have a conversation. Hey, this campaign didn't work. Hey, your approach didn't work. Your plan didn't work. But let's talk about it. That's what it looks like to create a space where others can grow safely. Second, leaders grow themselves while also growing others. This was a gigantic shift for me. All through my career as a designer, I was focusing on growing myself. How do I get better at typography? How do I get better at page layout? How do I learn the new technologies? How do I understand social media strategy? How do I? That was my mantra. How do I grow? And that made sense. I was a creative on a church staff trying to bring creativity and strategy and all of these different communication practices to an organization that I believed in. I wanted the message of the gospel to be shared as effectively as possible. As soon as I stepped into leadership, meaning I was managing a team, I had a group of people that I was now trying to help grow as well. It was a really complicated season for me because I had never helped other people grow. So all of my attention went there. Now it became, I'm going to help everybody else grow. But then I found myself atrophying. And what that looks like for me is I get pretty grumpy. I have a bad attitude. I'm not interested in your projects because I'm not growing anymore. Okay, I'm out of balance. I had to work on growing myself and growing others at the same time. It's a difficult shift. Now, you may be saying, well, I don't lead people, so I don't have to worry about that. False. You do have to worry about that. And this is what it looks like for you. If you're the only communicator on a church staff, you need to grow your student ministries person. You need to grow your children's ministry person. You need to grow your senior pastor. You need to grow whoever it is that you interact with on a daily basis. As you help them understand new communication principles, you're growing them, you're developing them. You need to be pursuing that yourself as well. One of the most common problems that I hear about church communications teams is that they have become the bottleneck. Well, why have they become the bottleneck? Because they haven't helped anybody else grow. No one else knows how to write a competent email. No one else knows how to leverage social media well for their ministry. No one else knows how to use a tool like Canva. There are tons of options that give us the opportunity to not be the bottleneck. But we don't lean into it when we don't help other people grow. It's a lack of leadership that makes calm the bottleneck. Shift your mindset away from I'm the only one who needs to grow, and instead focus on helping others grow as well. Third, lead calmly in chaos. This is a tricky one because I know a lot of people have a tendency to amp up when things aren't going right or when there's a chaotic situation that's coming. There are two things that have really helped me navigate this mindset shift. The first is recognize that time is going to pass. Time is going to pass and people aren't going to look back on this single moment or this single decision and say, you're fired, and say, this is cataclysmic for my faith, I'm leaving the church. That's just not what usually happens amidst chaotic situations. Usually people are gracious and they understand that these are hard situations. And I'll tell you this, if they do make that decision, then there's a lot of other problems going on. If this is the single decision, if changing the carpet color is the reason that somebody leaves your church, it's good that they're leaving your church because they were divisive and they were unwilling to submit to the work of the Spirit in their life in certain areas, this being one of them. It's a bold statement, but it's true. These are not things that should cause a separation or should cause disunity in the church. They're just not. So recognize that time's going to pass and this isn't going to be a major moment in history. So that's the first one. Time's going to pass. And then the second one here, you're going to have to trust that God's in charge. You're going to have to trust that the salvation of people is not on your shoulders. You are not responsible for the work of the Holy Spirit. It is Christ's church, not yours. It's Christ's church and he's building it. We have an amazing opportunity to serve in the church as creatives and to leverage the power of creativity and communication for the sake of the gospel. That is incredible. But ultimately, God's doing his work. So recognize when times are chaotic, when you feel like I may not hit this deadline, when you learn about a new project and now have to lead in the midst of the chaos, have some perspective and recognize God's at work. You're going to be all right. Fourth, take their criticism on your chin. Ooh boy, I can't tell you how hard that is. I spent the early time in my career feeling defensive about the work that I created. If there was a typo, I would figure out a way to blame somebody. Well, you gave it to me that way. Or you should have caught that in the proof. I remember one interaction that I had where somebody came to me and there was a mistake and I was so rude. And I basically said, well, you should have caught that in the proofing process. What a terrible way to handle that situation. I was not a leader at that point in my career by any stretch. What I learned over the years was there was always an opportunity for me to have helped prevent a problem from happening. Early on, I assumed it was their problem. I assumed it was their fault. I assumed it was their issue. But as I matured and as I grew, I realized, I could have had a better round of proofing that would have caught this. I could have been more overt in my instructions about the proof. Check all of the details to make sure things are looking the way that they need to look. Make sure that you're doing X, Y, and Z to make sure that, everything's covered. But I wasn't going that extra step. I wasn't taking that extra time to invest in guarding the project well. When I shifted my mindset, and instead when somebody came to me with a criticism, even if I knew it was 100% their fault, I would say, you know what? I'm so sorry that this happened. We're going to go back and we're going to look at our process and we're going to see how we can make adjustments to help prevent that happening in the future. Can I just tell you how much tension that released? How much tension that resolved? When I was defensive, all I did was like double the tension, and now we would amp up more, faster, quicker. It was not a good situation when I was defensive. When I started taking other people's mistakes on my chin, I began diffusing situations, and I would go back to my systems and my processes, and I would actually find ways for me to be better. I would find ways for our team to fix the things or to catch the problems that were happening much more effectively than I ever had in the past. When you're defensive, what you're doing is you're saying, my processes are perfect. My processes don't have any opportunity to improve. I mean, you may have good processes, don't get me wrong, but they're not perfect. There is no perfect process or system. And if there is one that achieves perfection, the world's going to change and it's no longer going to be perfect pretty quickly. So always assume that there is a chance that I can do something on my end. Now what you're doing is you're building bridges between departments, you're building bridges between other people, and you are restoring peace within the organization in a way that you aren't when you are defensive. 5, set others up for success. The reality is that you can't get everything done in your communications or in your creative work in the church. It's just not a feasible strategy. So you're going to have to set other people up for success. So what that means is shifting your mindset from being the world's best oboe player to now being a conductor. You are now working with a variety of people who play a variety of instruments. Early in my career, I was focused on being the best designer that I could possibly be. I wanted to be the oboe player that had the solo and did the phenomenal job. The issue, though, is that when you're leading, you can't be the oboe player and also be the conductor. That's just not compatible. So you instead need to shift and say, I'm going to have less oboe solos. That's what that means. But I'm going to look around and I'm going to find the people that are good at what they're doing. It may not be everything, but man, student ministry guy, he's got a lot of really unique ideas. Women's ministry, man, she's got a great aesthetic. Like she really comes to the table with awesome looks for events. What if I have a meeting as the creative and I facilitate this conversation? Students guy, give me some crazy ideas that you think will be a really big hit moving forward, for this next ministry event or opportunity. Okay, women's person, what do you hear? What do you see? Make a mood board for me, something. What is it that I can leverage on the team that's around me? It doesn't matter if they're paid staff. It doesn't matter if they're volunteers. It doesn't matter if they call themselves creative or not. You as the conductor can bring the best out of people. And that's a big mindset shift that leaders have gone through. How do I help other people be successful? 6, talk less, listen more. There's a real challenge in leadership mindset that you have to come to the table with all the answers. I have actually found the opposite to be true. Think about when you're an executor on the team. Let's say you're on the bottom of the totem pole. You want to be heard, right? You want somebody to listen to you, right? When you build in the practice of listening first into the way that you lead people, whether it be hearing what a volunteer recommends, whether it be a staff member that you are managing, whether it be the ministry leader that's on the other side of the table from you talking about a project, when you listen first, you are shifting into a leadership mindset because now you're gathering all of the data and the information that you need from other people around the table and then distilling it down to what you believe to be the best decision. Doesn't that sound a lot like leadership? I know for me, big lesson. I assumed I was supposed to come to the table, tell leadership how it is, and then they do what I say. Yeah, that didn't happen. And that's okay that it didn't happen, because that's not what leadership is. Leadership isn't getting dictated to by people in your organization. It's not. It's hearing what the experts that you've hired to be on your team have to say, and then making the best decision that you believe you can with that information. As you listen more, you're modeling that. Everyone share with me what they believe to be the right answer or what they believe to be the best approach. I'm going to combine those things. I'm going to merge those things. I'm going to cut some things, trim some things, make the changes that are necessary to build the right plan to solve this problem. 7, act like there's a backstory, because there probably is. There was a season of time for me where my wife was really dealing with some health challenges, and they were scary, to be honest with you. We didn't know if we'd be able to figure them out. Medicine and treatment didn't really seem to be helpful. I remember one day I was at work, I was struggling, I wasn't having a good day, and my boss came by my cubicle and he said, "Hey, I can tell that your wife's health is really bothering you right now. I want you to go home. I want you to, pick up groceries if that's helpful, make dinner, just hang out, clean the house, whatever it is that's helpful for you when it comes to caring for your wife. I want you to go do that, because I can tell that it's really impacting you. You're doing pretty bad work." Now, he didn't say that last part, and I'm thankful that he didn't, but it was probably true. I probably wasn't doing good work because my mind was somewhere else. There was a backstory. I've had tension with ministry leaders that I've served with. Tension where I was so frustrated, where I didn't even want to deal with these people. I didn't want to have a conversation. I knew that that wasn't a good heart posture to have. And I'm going to challenge you, if there are those people on your staff, it's not okay. It needs to change. And this, to me, was the key to making that change. Act like there's a backstory, because there is. When you begin to understand that every person that you're interacting with is a human being, has things going on in their life, and may not have everything going well all the time, it changes the way that you interact with them. I was having a really rough time with a certain person on staff, to the point where I didn't even want to pray for them. And so I began praying that God would work in my heart so that I would want to start praying for them. I heard through the grapevine of a situation that was going on personally. It completely stopped me in my tracks. I am confident that God worked through this. I did not realize how much pain was going on in other people's lives, because I was only thinking about my own life. I only know the details of my own life. When I stopped and I paused long enough to acknowledge that there was a backstory in every other person's life, totally changed the way that I dealt with negative encounters specifically. When someone would come to me and they would be frustrated, they would be angry, they would be just not the best to interact with, I was able to hit pause on my emotional response to say, you know what? They're probably going through some things right now. When they left my office, I would then pray for them, because I knew that that attitude or that approach was born out of something that was far more than just being a rude person or something else going on. That is a mindset shift that is critical for you as a leader, because what it's going to do is it's going to neutralize all of the angst, all of the toxicity, all of the I want to get back at them types of attitudes that creep in over time. We're not going to have perfect relationships with anybody. There's just no way. You have to build in some of these perspectives so that you can get through them without it damaging yourself. My contention is this: if you don't make this shift from an executor mindset to a leadership mindset, you will not last or thrive in church ministry. I just don't think it's possible for a church creative to last without making these 7 mindset shifts towards leadership. It's not going to happen overnight. Don't assume that it will. But if you're not proactively working towards these mindset shifts, there is going to be a gap of leadership that will not be filled by anyone else on the team. It just won't happen. And so you're going to either hop from church to church, you're going to be frustrated with new ministry employees when they come on the team, but there will be a growing resentment that happens in your heart, and I don't want that for you. And I say that because that's what happened to me. I had a lot of resentment that built up over time, and it prevented me from performing well. It prevented me from caring for people well. And it wasn't until I was able to address that and really begin making some of these mindset shifts that it all turned around. I want you to thrive as a church communicator, because I believe that what you bring to the table has the potential to increase the effectiveness of the ministry that you serve. I want the lost to know Jesus, and I think that you're a major part of that. So if you're struggling in the role that you're in right now, start adopting these principles and start growing as a creative leader in your church.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Leading Healthy Creative Teams. This podcast is just one of the ways Lunchtime Heroes helps build healthy creative teams in the church. Stay up to date on the latest by signing up for the Creative Bites email at lunchtimeheroes.co.